thanks for the invitation, Chris. That I've spent a whole strategy day today. So one of the great things about being financially independent is you get a chance to spend not 8 hours a day working for somebody else, but thinking about yourself. And I spent pretty much the whole day with Simon Zucci today. And what we were doing today is, well, two things. I gave him a gift, which I'm going to share with you. But the second thing is, we think all this stuff that's going on with the tax problems at the moment, forgetting the judicial review on property, is there's a golden opportunity in there as well. So as was correctly said by whoever said about the set of the sail, and it's the same wind that blows on us all, every single problem affords an opportunity in disguise. And I want to make a point to Ben, because Ben was the very first person he spoke to tonight when I heard him speak with Chris. And he said something about fear. And I want to make a couple of things. Usually I do presentations to people who are already in property, like Karen was with me all day Saturday, right? Yeah, so she spent the whole day with me on Saturday. And I'm hearing that some of the language around people is, you know, whenever you do property, whenever you get into any kind of world of activity that builds wealth, do you find there's a strange language you've got to learn? You know, you've got to know the language of yield, of ROI, of AST, of HMO, of rent-to-rent, of lease options, commercial to resi. Article 4 I heard earlier on, right? And oh, crumbs, it's like, wow, it's a language. But you have to learn the language if you're serious about being wealthy. You just can take your time to get the language. And I would say, if you're in a group, a trusted group of people, like tonight, I hope, never be fearful of asking a question about the language. Because what keeps fear going, Ben, is not asking the question that you should ask. Okay? So while I've got a presentation, I'm going to be a bit freaky, and maybe I'll just go off piste a bit, depending on what questions you ask me. Is that all right? Mm-hmm. So rather than present to you, I'd rather work with you. And by the way, I don't have a course to sell at the end. Okay, and I've got a gift, and I'll tell you the gift because it was fun for me, because I've written a couple of books, and the last book I wrote, which was about how to build wealth by collaboration. I believe wealth is created best by people working together, not being on your own. Who agrees? Yeah. Right, cool. We're in the right place. Now, I spoke to Simon Zutu, who I've been working with now for 3 or 4 years, and I speak at his mastermind groups and teach them stuff. And I said to him, Simon, what did you think of my book? Guess what he said? Haven't bloody read it, Kevin. I said, why haven't you read it? Now, I don't know if you know anything about Simon, but Simon has a slight eye issue. And you'll see him constantly, his eyes constantly have to focus and refocus. And he said to me, I just don't like reading. Does anybody else not like reading? Okay, so Ian doesn't like reading. Right? Some people don't like reading stuff, so you have to understand how people communicate. So I said to Simon, which was, we meet every 90 days, and I said to him, by the time I see you again, I'll have the book narrated on audio for you, and you can have the first copy. I gave him that copy today. This is the audio of the book. 90 days it took me to do it. I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. But that's me, so I do own it. And there's a copy for all of you as well. So the second gift is to Chris to give to you. Okay? Because I really rate the fact that Chris is a bit of a good boy and a bit of a bad boy. He's a good boy because he burnt his bridges, but he's a bad boy because he burnt his bridges. Right? So I want to talk to you, Ben, about fear. Right, there's a great coach called Dan Sullivan. Has anybody heard of Dan Sullivan? No? Good guy to look up. He's a coach, and he's a Canadian coach, and he runs a business called Strategic Coach. And he said something about fear that just reached out to me, Ben, and I hope it reaches out to you. He says this: every time you're about to make a breakthrough in your life, you're going to feel the fear. And you've got two choices. Succumb to the fear, get back in the status quo and stay mediocre, or break through the fear and expect it the next time. You must break through the fear. So every time something new is happening, so those of you in property thinking, oh, there's fear going on with with the government changing the rules and so on? No. There's some fear there. There's big opportunity there. Lots and lots of people will be very overgeared in property, meaning they've got more mortgages than they really should have. And some will be selling their properties, and there'll be lots of opportunity to acquire property quite cheaply, I think, in the coming months. I hope it doesn't happen, and there's a bit of a review to try and prevent the thing happening, but there's always opportunities. Now, who's been on holiday? Who likes holidays? It's interactive, you are allowed to participate, right? Now, when you go on holiday, do you like it when somebody writes a brochure and says, at 9 o'clock in the morning, you walk to the square and you wander around, and then at 10 o'clock you have a coffee, and then at 10:30 you go off and walk somewhere else? No. You have to go on a journey of discovery. So, Ben, do stuff.
I will.
Find yourself in a place and you go, I don't like it. I don't like this place. And you turn around and go back. And if you make a mistake with someone who doesn't do the right thing by you, that's okay, but I call it falling forward. Yeah. You make a mistake and you go, what was the lesson? If you lose anything, don't lose the lesson. And you don't have to say what the lesson is out loud, but you can learn the lesson. And the lesson is always, if you had the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently?
Due diligence.
Now, why do people not do due diligence?
To be honest, I think do some.
Okay.
He's related to quite a famous property company.
Right.
And I left the name, and I spoke to several people who've done one of his
Okay. But in general terms, rather than focus on any bad experience, why do sometimes people make light work of due diligence? Do you think?
Don't see the value in it.
They don't see the value in it? Okay, maybe.
Sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. You kind of feel like, one of the things, I think there are two reasons I see a lot. First of all, the kind of people, what day of the week is it? I've lost track. Wednesday? Wednesday. Right. I was up in Peterborough doing the VIP thing, presenting to the VIP group yesterday. And so I was a bit, and then today's with Simon and then you, and so I'm a bit tired, which is why I might not stick to my presentation. But where was I? Oh yeah, Wednesday. Right, so on a Wednesday night at 8:30, what kind of people do that? Apart from being mad ones, what else? Come here at 8:30 on a Wednesday night when you could be watching whatever. Right, so you take action, which means, who's heard of wealth dynamics in this room? Anyone? Okay, if you haven't heard of wealth dynamics, Google wealthdynamics.com. Okay, and find out what your wealth dynamic is. What that means is your natural path of least resistance. Now, in case you're not surprised, which you won't be, my natural path to create wealth, I'm a star, which means I love communicating with lots of people. So ask me to look at a spreadsheet or do a bit of due diligence on my own, it's not going to happen. So I see stars and people who are like you coming to things like this often don't do enough due diligence because it's not on your natural makeup. You need to connect with people who can do it for you. And part of the reason why I created WealthBuilders is to place where people can be trusted. So I do 7 layers of due diligence. I won't tell you what they all are. And we're creating a rating system like a TripAdvisor for connecting with people. So while I can't speak loudly about Chris and your program, I can say they're on the right track, because if you are serious about escaping the rat race, and who's actually serious or who's just kidding? Who's serious? Everybody's, no hand, come on, participate, right. So everyone in this room is serious, right? 3 things you need. Now, they're a variation of your own, sir, but they're the 3 things I think you need. ESC, what are they?
Equity.
No?
Education.
Education first. Because you spend so much time with me, is it all right just to ask you to let people have the journey of discovery for themselves? And I hope to find something of value to you, Karen, because I love your participation. And what I have to say about you is I love your energy. Right? So I love that. Right. Education is the first thing. So before you spend any money, before you start doing things, get educated. Which means you've got to ask the question, who do I trust to provide the education? Well, if you trust these guys, it's a good place to start.